Imagine risking your life on the beaches of Normandy in 1944. You're fighting Nazi Germany. You believe the enemy is clear. But what if I told you that while millions of soldiers were dying, some of the world's most powerful bankers were still doing business with both sides? Not spies, not politicians. Bankers. One American banker was so valuable to Nazi Germany that German authorities reportedly ensured he could travel safely through occupied Europe during the war. Why? Because money doesn't stop moving when wars begin. Sometimes it moves even faster. History teaches us that World War II was fought with tanks, planes, and millions of soldiers. But wars are also fought with something much quieter: loans, oil, steel, gold, and banks. This isn't a story about secret weapons. It's a story about financial power, about international banks, global corporations, and economic decisions that helped shape one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. To understand how this happened, we have to go back, not to 1939, but to the end of World War I, because the road to Hitler didn't begin with a battlefield. It began with debt, and once you see how that debt worked, you'll understand why some of the biggest financial institutions in the world became deeply connected to Germany's recovery. Let's begin. When World War I finally ended in 1918, Europe wasn't celebrating. It was bankrupt. Millions were dead. Entire cities had been destroyed, and someone had to pay the bill. The Allies believed they already knew who that someone was: Germany. In 1919, the Treaty of Versailles forced Germany to accept responsibility for the war. The country was ordered to pay enormous reparations worth billions of gold marks. It wasn't just a punishment. Many leaders hoped it would permanently weaken Germany as a military power. Instead, it created something far more dangerous. Germany's economy collapsed. The government printed money faster than it could be counted. By 1923, people carried wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy bread. Life savings disappeared almost overnight. Businesses failed. Millions lost their jobs. An entire nation fell into humiliation. Desperate people don't just lose money, they lose trust. Trust in politicians, trust in democracy, trust in the future. And when that happens, extreme ideas suddenly become attractive. But while ordinary Germans struggled to survive, another group saw opportunity. Across the Atlantic, Wall Street wasn't asking, "How do we save Germany?" They were asking something very different. How do we protect our investments? That question would change history. In 1924, the United States introduced what became known as the Dawes Plan. Officially, its purpose was simple: help stabilize Germany's collapsing economy. But behind that goal stood something much bigger. American banks, powerful financial institutions led by firms like J.P. Morgan and Company, helped arrange billions of dollars in loans for Germany. Factories reopened, railroads expanded, steel production increased. The economy slowly came back to life. To investors, it looked like a brilliant success. The system almost looked perfect. American money flowed into Germany. Germany used that money to help meet international obligations. European governments stabilized. American lenders earned interest. Everyone appeared to benefit, at least for a while. But there was a hidden problem. Those loans didn't just rebuild homes, or schools, or hospitals. They also strengthened German industry, steel, chemicals, heavy manufacturing, the same industries that years later would become critical to Germany's military production. Then, everything changed. In 1929, Wall Street crashed. The Great Depression spread across the world. American loans stopped almost overnight. Germany's economy collapsed once again. Millions lost their jobs. Fear returned. And in the middle of that chaos, one political figure began attracting more attention than ever before. His name was Adolf Hitler. When Adolf Hitler became Chancellor in 1933, Germany didn't just need soldiers. It needed fuel, rubber, steel, chemicals. A modern army couldn't exist without industry. And industry couldn't survive without international technology and business. One of Germany's most important industrial companies was G. Farben. It became one of the largest chemical corporations in the world. The company produced synthetic fuel, synthetic rubber, industrial chemicals, and later became infamous for its role during the Holocaust. Its influence reached nearly every corner of Germany's war economy. Years before the war, I.G. Farben had entered business agreements with several foreign companies. Among the most significant was Standard Oil of New Jersey, one of America's largest oil companies. The two corporations exchanged patents, shared research, and cooperated on industrial technology. At the time, these agreements were viewed as international business, but my history would later judge them very differently. One, the technology proved especially important. Germany had very limited natural oil reserves. Without synthetic fuel, its air force, its tanks, and much of its military would have struggled to operate. Synthetic fuel became one of the foundations of Germany's wartime logistics. As the war expanded, questions began to emerge inside the United States. Were some American corporations maintaining business relationships that benefited Germany before, or even during parts of the conflict? Government investigations examined several companies and agreements. Some cases resulted in fines or legal action. Others remain debated by historians even today. What is certain is that international business didn't simply disappear when the world went to war. In many cases, it adapted. As the war continued, another institution quietly remained open, not in Berlin, not in London, but in neutral Switzerland. It was called the Bank for International Settlements, or simply the BIS. Its mission was to help central banks cooperate, even during wartime. Because the BIS operated from neutral territory, it became one of the few places where financial communication between central banks continued throughout the conflict. After the war, historians closely examined its role. Some argues the institution helped preserve global financial stability. Others questioned whether maintaining financial cooperation during such a devastating conflict came at too high a moral cost. That debate continues to this day. When World War II finally ended, millions had lost their lives. Entire cities lay in ruins. Some military leaders faced justice. Some industrial executives were prosecuted. But many financial institutions survived, adapted, and continued operating in the post-war world. History often remembers the generals, the presidents, the dictators. But behind every major war, there is another battlefield, one filled with contracts, loans, oil, steel, and money. Understanding that financial battlefield doesn't change history, but it may change how we see it. If you enjoyed this documentary, consider subscribing. This channel explores the hidden financial stories behind the biggest events in history, because sometimes the most powerful weapons aren't tanks or bombs. They're the people who decide where the money goes.